Hey, everybody. I'm Josh Olive with Haven Comics. We are here tonight with a very special guest, and we're really looking forward to hearing from him. So stick around after the intro and let's get moving. Like I said, Josh Olive with Haven Comics, the absolute best comic book store at our address, bar none. We have got an awesome guest on tonight. We're really looking forward to hearing from him. I know that you are too, because we shared the event out and publicized who was going to be on. So we don't want to leave you guys hanging. But until we get to our guest, I do have to introduce you to our co-host, Mr. Alan Breedlove. How you doing, Alan?
I am doing great. We've had another really good week so far. I did read an article today, and we have some good news for the Incredible Hulk fans that are watching. There is a Incredible Hulk clothing line coming out.
Is there?
Yep, they say it's all the rage.
See, you broke up during that. I
Oh,
didn't
I
even get
did?
your punchline. That was
Yeah,
terrible.
that was awful.
It was so bad that the internet didn't want you to share that.
And that was truly an awful dad joke, too. Well, with that, I say we just go straight to the guest. I'd rather talk to him than you anyway.
I'm on board with that. Let's do it. Everybody, we have got, as I said, an awesome guest on tonight. This is somebody who has written stories that you have read, that you are interested in, that you have argued about, you've stayed up yelling at your friends about. Um, and he's kind of been all over the place. I want to introduce you to Mr. Kyle Higgins. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Dude, you got an ovation, and there's not even anybody live here in the audience.
I don't know what that says about my my track record, but I guess it can only go down from here. What I'm not sure. Is it gonna clap throughout our interview or?
I don't know. I have no control over that, but you're the first person I know of that has started with that. So that's
my
pretty good.
timing's getting better, so.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, and hey, if he cracks a good joke and I'm fast enough, I'll even hit him with one of these.
I can get used to that.
Yeah, just to be like go around with your own soundtrack and your own laugh track. That's not a bad way to go.
Yeah. No, very very nice to see you both. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, happy to talk about whatever comic stuff you guys want to talk about.
Awesome. We are looking forward to that. Let's take a quick chat and see who's in the chat here. We got hey Kyle, how you doing, man? Hope everything is going well. Tots, good to see you here. Kyle Higgins was on a YouTube tabletop. Hyperforce. Sounds about right. So you a role playing game guy, Kyle?
I'm not. No. It's something I think is really cool. But I don't have any real experience with it.
It is pretty cool. We can fix that for you if you like.
The problem, unfortunately, it's not for a lack of interest or desire. It really is the opportunity cost of time. Yep. I don't really know what. Yeah, it's not. I'm not taking like vacations or anything anytime soon, based on the stuff coming up that we're doing.
Well, you've created a whole universe, so you've got to attend to that, and so now you know a little bit of how God feels.
At least in 4 colors. I don't know.
That's
no.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's just a lot of, we're doing a lot of really cool stuff. And, I work on the other books to different extents, but it's just there's a lot of trains to keep on the tracks. I can't even fully say on time, just because it just feels like we're always racing the clock a bit, but that's really a byproduct of just how much kind of really ambitious stuff we're trying to do. So, but yes, that it all does require time and attention and tending to. So,
well, we got folks who are excited about having you on the show. Daniela's here. We got Brandon, super excited for No One. Tom Ryan's here. He was asking about the No One podcast. You got any news on the No One podcast you want to share with folks?
Well, what does he mean by news?
I don't know. I was hoping you knew.
No, I mean, it's so for those who don't know, yeah. So No One, which actually I have right here.
Oh man.
This is issue 1 of 10, and this is a true crime superhero experience, is the way that we're describing it, because not only is it 10 issues, but each monthly issue takes place in the week it comes out in, because we're actually telling narrative across in-universe websites and social media accounts as well. If you check out the Drop PL, that's an account for the branded coverage of the Pittsburgh Ledger. Part of that branded coverage in the new media division of the newspaper that is covering this accountability killing movement that's happening in Pittsburgh right now. The new media division talks two of the reporters into starting a podcast as they chronicle their investigation. And it's a very kind of heightened time in Pittsburgh when the first issue kicks off. This has been going on for like 6 months, this kind of spate of accountability killings that really date back to No One, this digital activist who has doxed 4 people of means, and then nothing happened. And so someone started killing them, very corrupt people in Pittsburgh, and nothing happened in the justice department or justice system. And so then someone else starts killing them, and that kicks off this whole kind of thing. Well, that podcast that the reporters are going to do, we're making every month. We're making it with Rachel Lee Cook and Patton Oswalt, both voicing the 2 reporters from the book, Julia Page and Teddy Barstow. And then we're doing a variant cover for each issue by our wonderful colorist and poster artist extraordinaire, Mark Englert. That is what we're calling the podcast variant, which is basically like a poster album art for that episode of the podcast that also we're doing as a cover. So beyond that, there's some other wrinkles coming up that people can be on the lookout for. There may or may not be a little hidden No One site that's already currently up. Some people are trying to find ways to interact with. So yeah, it's a really big, ambitious storytelling approach that we're taking with this one. So it's myself, it's Brian Buccellato co-writing with me, and Geraldo Borges drawing, Mark Englert coloring, Hassan Atsmani Oahu. I'm sorry, Hassan, I'm sure I just butchered your last name. Lettering, and Michael Basudel designing and editing for the Massiverse.
Yeah, so it's not it's not a one-man show, right? It's a team to do all this and make all this happen. But I got a question: how in the world do you get that kind of voice talent for this podcast? How do you do that? How do you even go about starting that?
Well, I'm a big animation nerd to begin with, so you know, I know Rachel from doing conventions over the years, but also because I know, you know, we met because of mutual friends. Like Will Friedle is a friend of mine, and I'm, you know, not only am I a big fan of his in general. Please don't tell him I said that. But
well, he's our guest next week, so
yeah.
We'll be sure not to say.
But he's also the voice of Terry McGinnis of Batman Beyond. And, you know, I had this long kind of run, I shouldn't say long, but I had a several year run at DC where I was writing Nightwing for the New 52 and then some other Nightwing projects, Batman Gates of Gotham, Batman Eternal, Batman Beyond.
I gotta say, this was one of my favorites.
Yeah, mine as well. I'm really proud of that one.
God, that was such a good story.
Yeah,
man, that was awesome.
So I've just met different voice actors associated with the stuff that I really like, which is all the animated DC Universe stuff that I grew up on. And, you know, Rachel voiced one of the characters in Batman Beyond, one of the, Chelsea's friend. Or is her name actually, is it Chelsea? Or anyway, she voices one of the friends at high school. And so, yeah, we've just kind of known each other over the years. I've known Patton over the years. He was a big fan of my book Cowl in 2014. That is also a part of the Massiverse now. And so when it
so
came
you folded that in. That's awesome.
yeah. And so when it came time to put this together, it was like, well, I want to cast, I want to pull from people I know, if possible, because this is such an outside the box kind of idea. No one's really done this before, especially in comics. And so it was like, okay, well, let's, we're going to have to figure this out as we go.
So now you, in No One, you mentioned like social media accounts. Are y'all going to try to do any type of specialized social media accounts to kind of promote No One?
They're already up.
Yeah. They're already up. I see. That's
Yeah.
what I was looking on Twitter for, like a drop PL, but I didn't see anything anymore.
Yeah, no, it's up. It's it's literally at the drop PL.
All right, let me track that down right quick.
So we got a quick question from Brandon asking if do you got any plans to continue Cowl anytime soon?
We do have plans for Cowl. But I can't give you more detailed information than that at the moment.
Well, I think just letting folks know that there are plans in place for the story to move forward, I think, is all anybody really wants to know.
Yep.
Because they want to be surprised at how it happens and what happens. So yeah, people are excited for that. That's awesome.
I mean, if you go to the drop PL on Twitter right now, you would see that they're across all sorts of information in Pittsburgh, including it looks like there's a sighting of No One on top of PPG Place. I don't know if you can see that, Alan, but
yeah, and that's what I'm looking at. It's DROPPL.
I just sent you the link in chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because
it's the drop. I think
it's the drop.
Gotcha. Okay.
Got to use all your words there, Alan.
No, I don't do that. Okay, so
then you're not going to find it.
Getting followed. So, you mind if I post this for everybody to see the link?
Sure, go for it.
All right.
So we'll circle back around to No One here in a little bit, because everybody wants to know what because that's coming out very soon, and we want to make sure that first issue sells like hotcakes so that everybody gets their hooks into number 2, and we boost this book up and support the awesome team of people who are making this happen. And I love all of this kind of augmented reality stuff that you're doing around this. It gives a story a kind of mystique, a little bit of gravitas, and gives you these extra things. I remember when Lost did that, the TV show Lost back in the day.
Yeah.
And people were just out of their minds with what's going on with this. So you've got all these other things to supplement and expand on what's just on the page. That is really ambitious, and I imagine probably exhausting. But I'm really excited to circle back around to that. But before we do, I would like to kind of introduce folks to you a little bit and hear about your... We all love a good origin story. How did you go from little guy on the playground, running around, playing with your friends, to, hey, I like comic books, I like this stuff, and now suddenly, boom. So how did you go from that to being the Kyle Higgins comic book writer today? I know that's a lot to ask. So
no, it's actually a pretty, sorry, if you hear me typing, it's because I'm literally texting with Brian right now, trying to solve a No One story beat. That's just
excellent.
It's really kind of 24/7. So
I'll tell you what, if you'll tell me that story beat, I'll help you solve it right here.
Sure, no, I'm sure you will. I'm gonna keep that in my back pocket. Definitely in case of emergency break glass.
Call me whenever. Call me whenever.
I like it. Sorry, my cat is now climbing behind my computer because
cats are always very helpful.
When I'm on Zoom, just get down. Come on. And there goes everything on my desk. Great.
Cats are nothing.
Yeah, it's funny because I was born in 85, so I grew up in the 90s in the suburbs of Chicago, and superheroes were just kind of like everything to me, from Batman the Animated Series and Spider-Man the animated series, X-Men the animated series. It's a lot of animated series now that I say it out loud. But then
you would
comics,
think that the fact they were cartoons on
especially,
TV would give that away, right?
What's up?
That you would think that since they were cartoons and they were on TV in a serial fashion, that would give it away, and you wouldn't have to put the animated series on it. But,
right. Well,
yeah,
but
you're
now
right. They all had
many. Yeah. And then, there were certainly the movies were the most impactful. Burton's Batman and Richard Donner's Superman. And, I basically started making movies with my dad's camera and my dad and my sister when I was like 7.
Awesome.
And that's kind of all I've ever wanted to do. Besides a brief period where I thought it'd be really cool to like work at Soldier Field and be the guy that like paints the end zones for the Bears. I mean, there's still
Somebody
time.
has to do that.
It's I loved the idea of being on the field, and actually I had like miniature Soldier Field at home, like for starting lineup figures,
That's
like
awesome.
and stuff like, yeah, so nerdy. But basically when it came time in film school to make a big senior thesis project, I decided, because I was there for directing, I'd transferred to Chapman University in Orange County. And I'd had this idea a few years earlier about a superhero labor union. And originally I actually wrote it as a short kind of trying to be comedy piece that prose. And that's actually what got me into the film school. And then once I was there, I realized like, well, if you set it in the 1960s in Chicago, like it suddenly doesn't feel comedic, the concepts. Like it feels like, ooh, there could actually be some real meat there to get into, and to do something with superheroes in a slightly different way. And doing something in the past made it feel a little easier to sell, costumes and superhero stuff in general. And, this is before The Dark Knight came out, before Watchmen, the film. And so basically that's when we made it. And it was called The League. It was my big senior thesis project. It almost killed me. It's like 30 minutes long. It's on our YouTube. You can go there now on our Black Market YouTube. But what it did was it opened up a lot of doors for me, both as a director out here at a pretty young age, but also Joe Quesada at Marvel, who was the editor-in-chief at the time. He had been sent the short film and he watched it. And so he reached out to me. And we kept talking, and he basically, gave me an opportunity to pitch to Marvel. And so I pitched a whole bunch of different stories over the course, definitely over a year, maybe longer, to Tom Brevoort before we landed on something that fit. And I did a Captain America one shot with Alex Siegel, who wrote The League and Call with me. And then from there, it just kind of turned into it just turned into a career. And DC was getting ready to do the New 52, and I had gotten to know Mike Martz a little bit, who was the Batman group editor, and I did some backup stories that introduced the Night Runner character, and Mike really liked my work on that stuff. And then it made sense. I don't remember quite how it happened, but I ended up writing Gates of Gotham with Scott Snyder, and then Nightwing proper and Deathstroke for the New 52.
So good. Yeah, that run on Nightwing was fantastic. We really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
Now, you mentioned something a second ago about doing pitches over the course of a year, and that was something that I was kind of curious about. I thought about this earlier today. So let's say we'll use Nightwing, Power Rangers, Supermassive, and now No One as an example, as our 4 examples. How is the sales pitch basically different for those types of stories? Because I know with Nightwing and Power Rangers, you're pre-established, with a mythos. With No One, we're pretty much brand new. And with Supermassive, y'all are bringing together a universe.
Sorry,
does that make sense?
I'm not quite sure I follow. When you say sales pitch, what do you mean?
So when you go in to pitch, say No One to Image
Yeah.
Comics. How does pitching the story of No One differ than, say, when you would go in to pitch a new story for Nightwing or Power Rangers or something like that? I mean, is it any different at all?
No, well, it is different. It's different. Each of those books they take place at kind of different points in my career. So depending on where I was at the point that I was pitching that book, it definitely is a different experience. Nightwing was always very challenging. They actually hired me for the book very late in the process of the New 52, like only a few days before the whole relaunch was actually announced to the world. There was another writer doing it that it didn't work out. I mean, it predated me, but I was doing Deathstroke, and I was, creatively very close with Scott. And because of what he wanted to do with the Court of Owls and building this Dick Grayson kind of component into the backstory, it made a lot of sense for me to be writing Nightwing, in addition to the fact that I love that character, as you can see behind me here. But it was a very complicated era of comics, especially at DC. And to be starting out as like a basically brand new writer, like it was beyond the deep end of the pool. Like I was figuring out how to do this consistently, telling good stories, hopefully. Much less, monthly comics are brutal. Like it's a brutal grind. Whether you're starting out or you've been in it for a long time, like they're hard to do. So I was navigating that while also then navigating the politics of a very, heightened time at DC, because there was a lot that was on the line with this and a lot of attention put on every book because they wanted to get everything right. Totally understand that. Creatively, it was tough. And so pitching stories has its own complications there, because of just who you're pitching to, who wants what, a lot of different cooks in the kitchen sometimes, a lot of different needs that need to be serviced, stuff like that. Power Rangers was quite a bit different because from the get-go, unlike Nightwing, where the opportunity was there very late in the game, I didn't have a story. I had to build something, not on the fly, but I had to build something much quicker than I normally would have in a situation like that, because it's being announced. Now we have a date that we're going to hit. We have to hit for a launch, day. And Eddie Barrows needs to start drawing. Like the first 7 pages of my first issue of Nightwing, I wrote them the day they hired me, Marvel style, which is funny because I actually think they still use that script for artist sample, like tryout pages, because they really liked what I did.
Nice.
But it's still like, I knew what I wanted to do with the cold open and some of the thematic ideas that I would touch on, but I didn't know what the rest of the issue was yet. But Eddie needed to start drawing. And so it really was like, figure this something out, quickly. Whereas Power Rangers, like when you do what I'm trying to say is when you do a story like that, it opens you up. Like things end up being malleable because that you're not coming in with like a clear cut plan. Whereas Power Rangers, like I got that book because of a bake-off. It was a bake-off situation, meaning there were other writers pitching for it as well. And I had a take that I really believed in, and I built out my pitch really kind of centered on that take. And it was also a kind of a case where it's like, if they didn't, and I think I did say this to them after we went through a few rounds, I basically said like, this is the way I would do it. I don't think I want to do it if it's not this way. Like then I'm not the person for it. But fortunately, they really liked what the approach was. But when you're in the weeds and building stuff, there's always going to be different types of conversation, different types of notes that you're trying to navigate and things like that. But I guess we can keep it limited to just like getting the job. The thing is, then after that, and then you talk about something like Supermassive and No One, I do all my creator-owned books at Image for the most part here, and I have a good relationship there. I've got a good relationship relationship with Eric Stevenson, the publisher. And so, it was actually Eric's idea initially. He was looking to create her own superhero stuff again at Image. And when he told me that and asked if I'd ever thought about doing that, I very much leapt at the idea. So that, that means then it's already kind of in Hollywood terms, you would call it's a warm room, meaning you're not walking into like a frigid cold environment where everything has to be you really pushing this boulder up a hill to get something approved or anything like that. It was like he was already looking to do this. And then because Inferno Girl Red was in the works as well, and I told Ryan that Eric was looking for stuff too, Ryan came up with a pitch for Rogue Sun. And then it was very quick. It was like, oh yeah, we could see how to do this as something a little bigger. And then the idea of Supermassive specifically, which is a big 48-page one-shot that we do once a year so far. So that I think pretty sure, not sure if that was Michael's idea. It's definitely his influence. Like the books are set up in a way where everything is their own thing, because it was very important to me, and well, to all of us, but I was really championing it from the get-go. Like you want everyone's kind of property, because everyone owns their own book. You want them to not be reliant on each other in meaningful ways. So that's why everything's in its own separate city, makes it easier to silo it off. And then once a year, they could cross over in a big special like this, which also very much comes out of, the tradition of great kind of tokusatsu crossover movies and specials, and Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, which certainly has an influence on all of us. I mean, we all wrote Power Rangers before doing the Massiverse stuff. But yeah, so then, but what's interesting there, so that's an easy pitch because it's baked into the concept of what we're trying to do from a line standpoint. No one though is interesting because I built it out in the background and had an intention on pitching it to Eric, but I wanted to wait until I had enough and it was kind of the right time, because I knew how outside the box the idea of doing the podcast and everything else would be. But Eric could not have been more supportive. He got it immediately. He said yes, you should totally do this. So, but some of that also comes, Alan, out of the years of doing other books where it does make it a little bit easier to pitch things where, I can, in some cases it's a little more informal now, for at least for this stuff, which is nice.
So you've already built up a lot of equity with these guys, right? They know,
I hope so,
your body of work. They know the quality of your work.
Yeah.
They know that you're going to deliver. And so when you talk to them, I can see them going, okay, yeah, you're not some guy that's right out of the blue. I know what you're bringing to the table. And
it's
that
cool.
Sounds good to me.
It's cool too, because Eric has seen all of the stuff we've done here, including the surprise secret short film, Radiant Black animated short film with Will Friedle of Batman Beyond playing Radiant Black. Eric has seen all this stuff. We talk all the time, and I send him stuff all the time. So he sees all of these things actually come to be, right? I had the thought of doing the short film while I was texting with him at one point during the pandemic, where I was explaining this issue I wanted to do. And then suddenly it hit me and I went, oh shit, I gotta make the short, don't I? And he's like, that would be the best version of this, and I was like, all right, that's what we're going to do. And then we did it. So the cool thing is I bring up this podcast, he doesn't even bat an eye. And at no point does he ever, at least as far as I am aware, doubt that we're going to pull it off. And that's pretty cool to have that kind of support and just trust. So
that's awesome. So let's go back and talk a little bit about your run on Power Rangers.
Sure.
Because it sounds like you came into that, you already had this whole concept in mind. I don't know if you had the whole story arc fleshed out or if it was more of a tone that you were wanting to set. But I can tell you that Power Rangers went from being from selling for us about this much to this much very quickly. And during the course of your run, it stayed there. And when you
Well,
left,
that's awesome.
it did this again. Um,
Mhm.
and so when you started with Radiant Black and now Radiant Pink and Supermassive, these folks are like, okay, that's my new Power Rangers. That's what I'm doing now. So I guess we start back with the Power Rangers. When you went into it, how much of that did you already have all those ideas in mind for Evil, Tommy Oliver, Lord Draken? Did you have all that stuff going on in your head before you ever got the gig?
No. So what happened was, I can tell you the genesis of it all because I actually think it is pretty linear in its logic. Maybe Alan, this is a good kind of example of process for you. Um,
Yep.
so what I really pride myself on as a creator is taking full advantage of a concept and also like exploring a concept in the way that gives you the most kind of potential, like for like really interesting thematic and emotional kind of material. Um, with Power Rangers and pre-existing properties, what that means is like, well, what's your way in? Like, what's interesting about the concept to you, as well as what it represents? And you're talking about a new number one and doing something with a property that's never really been done. It's never had comics in this way. There have been comics in the past, but not in the way I knew Boom was planning to. And they wanted to do something like a big superhero series. So what I decided very like immediately in my head, it was like, I don't want to do a new origin. I don't want to retell the origin. I knew kind of just in my heart, like, or in my gut, it was like, that would probably open me up also to like, I don't know what this, like the dynamic with Saban will be at this stage. So it's like, well, I don't want to touch that stuff because I'm sure I'm going to get noted to death if we try to do it. But also it's like, I also did not want to do a 90s nostalgia book. And so it became like doing something contemporary and doing something, right now, but I don't want to retell and update their origins or redo their origins. So it's like, well, then what is the way in? And I was watching old episodes and probably unsurprisingly as a kid, like the Green Ranger saga was epic. Like I loved it. I mean, it's also a huge touch point for a lot of Power Ranger fans, for good and for bad, But and I don't mean bad. I just mean I know there's a sentiment of like there's been a lot of Tommy Oliver over the years, and so I understand when in the past the feeling was like, well, there's been a lot of Tommy. Is Tommy really the only way in? In this case, it really felt right because looking at the show, you at the end of episode 5, after he's brainwashed, and they break the spell, he basically joins the Power Rangers immediately, like the very next episode. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like he just went from trying to kill them to he's a member of a team. I wonder, and it just kind of like all unlocked. And I went, oh, I know the way into this. The way in is through Tommy joining the team. And then I can explain and get across who everybody is, what this is like, because we're now in his shoes as an audience joining, right? But what's even more interesting is that if Power Rangers at its core is, I would argue, a franchise that is about the strength and power of friendship and teamwork, the idea that we are stronger together, and they literally are better together, the Megazord and everything that it represents in terms of it forming together. So it was like, well, if that's what Power Rangers is really about at its core, it'd be interesting to explore that through the lens of someone new joining the group. And what do they think of him? And the fact that he had just tried to kill them all this time. What does he think about it? Does he feel worthy of doing this? Then, the idea of playing Rita as more of a kind of like the Gaius Baltar in 6 kind of like, is she in his head? Is she real? What is she? From Battlestar Galactica is what I'm referencing. Playing that with Rita and Tommy up front was really interesting to me. And the other thing was that I knew Boom had said something to me early on, which was that Saban was definitely open to the idea of like alternate universe stuff. And so if you're talking about kind of superhero staple storytelling, like every superhero property has a Days of Future Past in them, it feels, right? So it's just like, oh, well, we can do so much with this book because we're not limited by scope or budget and having to use pre-existing footage. So like, let's play to the strengths of the concept and showcase it in its best light. And what that then meant was like, if Tommy's My Way In, the first year is basically Green Ranger year one, where you're basically getting him to the point of like being a full-fledged member of the team, being confident with them and feeling accepted and them accepting him. That's a really nice, like that from an arc standpoint, felt really nice for me to explore in year one. How that broke down across arcs, it ended up being a little longer than year one. I think it ended up being like 16 or 17 issues. But very early on, I would say, I mean, very early on, like before I'd written issue one, we were planning that the Black Dragon was actually the Zord, well, it turned out to be a Zord that was here, was actually being controlled by a dark, evil, older Tommy in another essentially timeline. Because to me, if you're talking about Green Ranger year one and him fully like coming to accept his place on the team and them accepting him, like he has to overcome his greatest fear in that way. And to me, the greatest fear is like he wasn't worthy, and what like creating a version of him that chose to stay evil and chose to stay with Rita after the spell was broken, and seeing what that would become and what that would look like, him overcoming that person, that force, would be the natural like third arc as you're building like the culmination of this year. And so then that became, and that's what it was for a long time. And then as we got closer, well, not even as we got closer, in the background, then I was building out the mythology of how the power coins were like merged, and the green energy and the white energy. Saban really liked the idea that they were in conflict with each other. And so then Jamal Campbell did this amazing design. And, they asked me to come up with a name as we're building him to be basically an original Ranger. And so I sat in a coffee shop in Illinois. I was back home to see my parents, and I basically took like 3 or 4 hours just figuring out how to do, like, what a name would be right for this. I knew I wanted it to be Lord something, and then, Draconian, Dragon, Draconian, Draco, Draken is essentially kind of how I got there. And then he just kind of took off when he actually, debuted in the book.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, Justin. So you said something earlier about film school and doing all this kind of stuff, and I think your stuff always has felt very cinematic to me, and maybe that's why. Maybe is your thought process that way? Do you envision a scene and kind of visualize how the arc of that scene will go, or do you just start writing and kind of follow it?
Well, are you talking about visually, or you said the arc of it will go? Do you mean?
Well, I know you're not drawing it, but yeah, I know you're not drawing it, but do you visualize it in your head and kind of watch it like a movie in your brain first, or how do you go about writing that?
Yeah, no, I definitely, I didn't always used to see it, but I could figure out, like, I know this will work even if I can't quite see it. But now I see everything. Yeah. Like we're doing on No One. We're actually doing it as well, first of all, I love the format, but also as a nod to my friend, the late Tim Sale. And the first issue of No One is dedicated to Tim. The origins of this project actually do date back to a Batman project that Tim and I were going to do a couple years ago. That just didn't work out, or wasn't the right fit at the time. But
his Batman,
this is very different from that, but there's still some of like his DNA, or the DNA of what we were talking about that's here. And so, writing in a 3-panel grid, essentially every page where you're able to subdivide within that to a certain extent, that's a very rigid format. But yeah, like I can literally see what each row should be and how many panels within each one. And, sometimes I won't be able to see like how close of a close-up is this, but also I don't dictate that stuff in the script. Like I basically, again, I kind of pride myself on, I come out of screenwriting. So it's like I'm writing just enough lines to convey what I think is important about a shot, but hopefully in a way that the artist is picking up on what's important, and then they're interpreting it. And most of the time we've gotten, we work with I work with amazing collaborators, and, as you get to know each other, you start to figure out what that shorthand, that visual shorthand is as well. And like, I'm like literally looking at pages right now from Geraldo from issue 2 of No One that are so cinematic. You know what? I'm going to do something. I'm just going to show you for a brief second.
Hang on now. Okay.
No, not that. What am I trying to share? Present.
Oh, you're sharing it electronically. That's even better. Yeah, this is exciting stuff, man. This is awesome.
So it's just one page. I'm only going to put it up for a second or two here. I don't think there's any spoilers in this. Can you see that?
Oh, man, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
You're not kidding about that being cinematic. I mean, look at the flow of that. I like the color palette, too. That's really awesome.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
When you write stuff like that,
Mhm.
I mean, I know you just said that, you can't picture it in your mind or anything, but does the potential for it to ever become a movie cross your mind, and you want to do it to where it would be easily transferred to a big screen media?
So I've never done a book to like try to make a movie. All the books that I do, though, like there's a lot of them that, yeah, I would for sure love to do one day. There have been other times that like opportunities have been there, but the opportunity was not there for me to be involved really. And so I've passed on those. And
Good call.
because we own the books, because it's that Image, because we, the creators, own the books, we're able to do that, as opposed to, you do a book with some publishers and it's a creator-owned book, except they have business control, if not owning it outright. And so like they'll go and do whatever they want on the film TV side.
And if you're lucky, you get a special thanks way back buried at the end of the credits. Yeah.
Well, in theory, you make money, except you would make money if they make a movie or a show, but only after all the costs of making the book are paid back to the publisher and whatever other fees that they add on to that. So
it's funny how that math always works out in somebody else's favor, isn't it?
But as far as the actual, like on the page, what the stuff looks like in order to be adapted, not really, because again, I really think you need to play to the strengths of the medium that you're working in. And I personally don't want or like adaptations that are actually more translations. I miss the days of like someone actually doing like real adaptation work on a property, as opposed to like, it's weird because as a writer, you certainly want your story told the way you told it the first time. You made those decisions for a reason. But I've adapted myself enough times to know that like, oh yeah, I've been too close to it before. And like, this would have been better if I did it with someone else, or at least looked at it in a different way, because I do think you're talking about two different types of storytelling and even visual languages. And so like, I have a whole thing about like, I don't like movies. Movies these days, most of them look awful, and the only thing that looks worse is most TV shows. And it's like I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but like it's like people don't want to light anymore, like, or they don't know how to light. Like nothing has a backlight, nobody's edged out. Like it just doesn't look
It's so dark you can't
cinematic.
see it.
Yeah, and
I
so
hate
that's
that.
my thing. Is like, yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But
Well, Justin has a quick question for you. Do you sell signed books on your site? He's a bit of a autograph hound.
yeah, we do. If you go to our website, it's
Black
blackmarket.la, and up there through the shop section, you can see. Here, you know what? I'll just share screen. I'll show you right now.
Awesome.
I can find it.
He's just made it. You made his day. He's happy.
Oh, good.
Hey, Justin, I am sharing the link to the website in the chat.
So this is our site, Black Market Narrative. So you can see more information on all of our books here, all of our universes. In the case of, there is a massive verse site coming soon. We're not sure when yet, but at some point here. On no one in particular, though, you can see like this is a good hub for not only ways to, if you don't have a local comic shop and you're watching this video, find a local comic shop or other means of digital purchase, as well as links up here to the podcasts and where you can subscribe. Again, the podcast will be for free every month. And there will be a giant QR code in the back of issue 1, or back of every issue that advertises the podcast that you can scan. It takes you to that month's episode. Up top, though, if you click on shop, we have two options. We have a merch shop, which is where we put up all sorts of cool merchandise tied to our books. We also do something where we do an exclusive item for every issue that's only available until the next month. Next month's issue comes out. So this month, it's a Radiant Retreat art print. This is the Chris Evenhouse B cover from Radiant Black 22, or actually C cover from Radiant Black 22, the issue where Nathan returns to LA. And you can get it in all sorts of different printing options here. But if you go to, let me try this. Did it just stop share screen?
Yeah, yes. It all went away.
Hell, let me do it this way now. The other section, though, under rarities, is where we do, we'll do cover drops and like really limited edition stuff. So right now we have foil edition of Michael Cho's No One cover. We have only made 150 of these, I believe, or 175 plus comps, but it's a very, very low print run. So you can buy it with signature or without. The best way to find out about these is to subscribe to our newsletter, which you can get to through the Black Market site as well. And through this newsletter, you'll be alerted to not only all the stuff going on in the Massiveverse and our books, but then when we do a big drop here of limited edition, 175 variant covers, they go pretty quick. So, and actually on that note, because I actually have one sitting right here, this is what the Michael Cho foil looks like.
Boy, that's sharp. That foil really serves that well.
That is nice. I like that.
Yeah. So there you go.
That's awesome. So there you go, Justin. I don't think he would object.
Just make them out to cash.
There you go. There you go. So you come into this. You you start off with an awesome book with Nightwing, and then you move into a property that is, like you alluded to earlier, largely nostalgic. And you took that and you turned the whole concept on its head a little bit and told serious contemporary stories in that. And then you moved on to your own creator-owned stuff, right?
Mhm.
Uh, if somebody really wanted to woo you back, could they bring you back out of creator-owned to work on other people's properties? Or are you just you going to stay in that sandbox and play where you've created your own world, your own universe?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. I'll be honest. It would have to be. It'd have to be pretty cool. I do still kind of keep a foot in that water a little bit, or sandbox, whatever the metaphor is. I co-write the Ultraman books at Marvel
Yes,
with
yes.
Matt Groom, and we do that at Marvel in conjunction with or in partnership with Subaraya in Japan. So it's a unique one. But yeah, I mean, look, if, people know how to get a hold of me. I don't know that I have time. Is the real reality of it all. But also, I'd be lying if I didn't say, like, with no disrespect to any other superhero stuff that's coming out, there's a lot of great stuff. The stuff that we're doing right now is definitely the stuff that I find the most exciting. And I know I'm biased there, but that's probably, you kind of probably have to be to, to build stuff out, or at least excited. And that, so yeah, it would have to be something really kind of special that honestly just gets me excited, to want to do it.
Now, with as busy, and I do ask this question of, just about every creator we've had on here. With as busy as you are right now, do you still have time to just go to an LCS and just pick up comics and just be a fan? Or is that kind
No,
of out the window for right
no.
now?
Yeah, no, I haven't read anything regularly in a long time. Like, I'll pick up trades and I'll read stuff from time to time now, but I read so much for work, on our own stuff. Like, it's a little bit of it's something you have to be mindful of, though, because I've heard, Rick Remender has said this before about, like, the more you write, the more you better be reading and watching, because there is a well, just from a, not stuff that, like, you're pulling from, but just, like, points of influence and inspiration and stuff like that. Like, you constantly need to be exposing yourself to things. So I do that, but it's less in comics than it is kind of in other places. And I'm a really big, I'm a film nerd. So there's that for me. And I read a lot of older comics now too, like, or just older runs of stuff. But yeah, your relationship with the material definitely changes the more you do it professionally. And I've been doing it for, I mean, I went full time in 2010, 2011, maybe. So it's, it's been a couple years at this point, 11, 12 years now.
Now, when you say a film nerd, what's your favorite genre?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I used to,
See,
I
I asked
used
a
to
hard
say,
hitting
like,
question.
thriller. I used to say, like, thrillers or sci-fi or superhero stuff. But now it's like, I just really like, I like films that feel crafted and like they're shot with a point of view. Um, so I tend to follow filmmakers now. Like, I will see anything Ryan Johnson makes, like, excitedly. Nolan, I still have a big love for Christopher Nolan, and yeah, I mean, Ridley Scott, James Mangold. Trying to think what I just saw something. I mean, I saw Avatar 2. Top Gun Maverick really impressed me. this year. Like I had a lot of fun. Surprisingly, I have no nostalgia for the first Top Gun. Like it just wasn't something. I think I had only seen it in the last year or two. But which movie do I think is going to win Best Picture? I don't know, but I'll tell you the one that I absolutely adore this year, and it's not a surprise, but I like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Absolutely blew me away. So that was something I had quite a lot of fun with this year.
So when you say Ridley Scott, in your opinion, which is the best Ridley Scott movie, and why is it Prometheus?
Well, I can tell you that it isn't.
I love Prometheus.
I'm with Kyle on that one, buddy.
Yeah, but like you can't say that Prometheus, even from an influence standpoint alone, Prometheus doesn't come close to Blade Runner, which I don't love the first Blade Runner movie. Like narratively, you're not watching that movie for the plot, you know. It's a tone piece with a very kind of by the numbers, you know, murder mystery.
It's a futuristic
film
mystery. Noir, right? It's
sort of, yeah. I mean, it's a neo-noir, but it ushered in, along with Neuromancer, it ushered in what we know to be cyberpunk. So it's like that movie alone is far more culturally significant than Prometheus, just from the look. No, I don't know. I don't hate Prometheus. It's not, you know, I haven't rewatched it since it came out, but what I can tell, I'm trying to think what my favorite movie from him is. I mean, I will always have quite a soft spot for Gladiator, of course.
yes.
Anachronisms aside, but yeah, I mean, Alien for sure. I really like Matchstick Men, actually, from years ago that he did. It's kind of
a good one.
Little Nicolas Cage movie. Yeah. I think probably though, at least in terms of modern era Ridley Scott, which is kind of like, I would say like the last 20 years, the director's cut of Kingdom of Heaven is like a fucking masterpiece.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. So jumping back a little bit, because I'm seeing a little bit of I guess not necessarily how your brain works, but some of the things that you absorb and some of those things that excite you or get you interested. So what? I'm trying to think of the way to articulate this question. When you go into it and you've got all of these different influences coming in, do you ever consciously pick and choose elements from this kind of a vibe or that kind of a plot device or this little? Do you consciously pick any of that, or is it just it's all this stuff that's in this melting pot inside your brain and little bits of it just kind of float up every now and again?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it depends on the thing. I feel like as creators, we're basically like what we're essentially paid for or read for is like, I believe like our filter, like the filter that we as beings who think and have taste put things through. And so, you know, if you give me two genres or two concepts and you give the same ones to Rick Remender or Ed Brubaker, like you're going to get very different stuff back. Just because of the influences and what the takeaway, the touch points are that are interesting, you know, to all of us. They might be different, you know, like, yeah. So but I do think like whether it's something you're able to, or I'm able to clearly put my finger on every time or not, there are certainly things and shorthands I have just from like years of not only writing, but reading and watching stuff where you clock things every once in a while. It's like, oh, that's really interesting. Like that. Okay. You know, like, and I'll have comps where the comp might not even make sense, but it's like for Radiant Yellow's origin issue in Radiant Black, Radiant Yellow is a character who can perceive all the branching points of his life and place his consciousness into any point, basically any decision point, and like perceive out what like how things could have gone. And this is going backwards and forwards, right? So I knew for his origin one shot, it was like, well, we can't do something normal. Like, where's the fun there, right? So my comp was like, well, what we really need to do is like, I need to do a Dr. Manhattan. And I didn't even mean the Mars issue of the comic. I meant more the episode of the HBO show. And it's not, when I show you what we did with Radiant Black, it's not that at all, but it's like a touch point for me, where it's like, I'm going to do my version of that kind of playing with causality and time and being ahead of, someone in the conversation and things like that. So what we did do for it, which was pretty cool, I'm going to share, I'm loading it here to show you. So we did this origin, where it's 4 eras of his life all at once. And it's 1984, 2002, 2020, and 2038. So each era is separated by 18 years for issue 18. And the whole book is done as double page spreads, timelines, right? So you can actually read this.
That's such an awesome concept.
So you can actually read this as as page turns, right? So you read the top row, second row, third row, fourth row, and then you turn the page, right? Top, second row, third row, fourth row, right? Well, I also designed it for a different experience. Let me figure out how to share this.
I love that as a concept, though. That's brilliant. That takes an artist who's willing to do an awful lot of work, too, because that's visually, that's an awful lot of work.
Wait till you see this. The way we did it, this was Stefano Simeone who drew it and colored himself. And my friend Lawrence Holmes co-wrote this issue with me. It was actually his first comic. I really dragged him into the deep end of the pool because I was adamant about structuring this, and I broke this in a way that we could also tell the story as one big, long fold out.
Oh, wow.
Did you see it?
Yep.
So you can actually read the entire era, the 1984 story, all the way across for 22 pages. Then you can read the 2020 or the 2002 story all the way across, then 2020, then 2038. And the best part is the narrative experience is different because you learn information at different points than you would from the the page turn version in the book. So we actually then made this version that was very, very limited that we sold through our newsletter. And this one I have a video for.
It's just a giant fold out. Yes. Oh man, that is awesome.
So if you wanted to send 2 copies of that to Haven Comics, I know a couple of guys that would really appreciate it.
We can put it up on the wall at the store, man, just all the way around. I mean, how long does that turn out to be?
So it's actually 12 pages. It's hand assembled as well. So we only made 200 copies of this, and I don't think we'd
awesome.
reprint it. So it was like very rare. And then it flips over for the back side. So it's 12 on one side and 12 on the other.
I don't know if you saw this recently, but as a former Nightwing author, Redondo did an entire issue where it was all one giant panel. And there was a store that I think he said 6 copies of it, something like this, to take the book apart and put the whole thing up around the wall at their store as one ginormous
that's
panel.
cool. So not only is that awesome, but I was very aware of it because Bruno Redondo had a Spanish printer do the version that is a fold out, an accordion fold out the whole way. And so I reached out to Bruno and said, hey, I'm actually, I'm doing something that's not that, but I need to be able to do this fold out. How do you do it? And so Bruno actually helped me solve the problem. And then we had the right information to go to Image, and we found a printer that was able to do it in the US. So Bruno actually has a special thanks inside that edition.
Oh,
So-
as well he should. That was some brilliant stuff. Hey, Nate, welcome to the show. Glad you're able to join us. Yeah, he's one of those that when I told him we had you coming on the show, he's like, "Are you serious? Nightwing, Kyle Higgins?" I'm like, "Yeah, same guy." Yeah, he was very excited.
So, like what you just showed us, when you have an idea like that, do you ever find yourself sitting around looking at it or trying to figure out how to do it, and then all of a sudden going, "Oh, sweet Jesus, what have I done?" I mean, that had to take some planning.
Yeah, I also wrote that issue. I was on the road a lot, and Stefano is unbelievably fast, but he also only had a very small window to do this issue before he had to go back and he's going back to do some stuff with Jeff Lemire for Black Hammer. And so I was basically writing it. We had a spreadsheet to kind of break where major moves would be. And so I could plan the other timelines around. Sometimes I would want them to line up, and other times I would want them not to line up, major moves in each timeline. And so by planning it that way, that helped. And then I was able to basically write plot for it all, knowing that I'd be able to dialogue it in a way that even if it was fractured because of the timeline nature, I could make it work. And so then the hardest part, honestly, was the dialoguing, and sitting down and like making what I wanted to do work in the art that was pretty locked. But I'm really proud of it. I think it turned out really, really, really well. So yeah, I mean, there are definitely moments of like not panic, but you're just like, okay, I mean, we go through them. I'm going through it. I go through it on No One. I'm going through it on some stuff. We're doing some stuff coming up in Radiant Black for the Catalyst War that is like, no one in comics has done this before. Like, we are trying something that is very, it's very bold. So there's definitely moments of like, okay, how do we make sure that it like we pull it off? And then you get to be really innovative and creative, and that's the best part.
Now, I assume the way you wrote that particular issue was one story arc at a time, or did you do them all simultaneously?
I did them all simultaneously. Yeah.
Okay, so I see why you cite Christopher Nolan as one of your the guys you like, because your brain clearly thinks along the same pathways that his does. Like, time is malleable; I can just do all the things.
What's funny is that I don't know if I can even say this, but
you can say whatever you want to say.
I was supposed to direct my first feature this year, and it's a feature script based on a short that I made. That's a very Nolan-esque idea, in the sense that it's about two identical twins who have this condition where only one can be awake at a time. So they pose as one person, and each one's awake for half of each day, and they leave like audio recordings for each other, so they always know like who who they met with or who the other one met with. But the feature script, so that's a short I made called The Shadow Hours in 2016. It's on our Black Market site and on YouTube as well. You can watch for free, with Tom Riley and Britt Lauer. Britt, who is currently blowing up on Severance, show is amazing. So we were, there's a feature script that I wrote that is very much a love letter to two of my favorite movies, Memento and Gattaca. And
but Gattaca is so underrated. That was such a phenomenal movie.
But yeah, without getting into specifics, there are some people that we had lined up to do this movie with me that it's just like, oh my God, like considering the stuff I just kind of referenced there, there were some people both acting and producing wise where it's not Christopher Nolan, but there are people that if I said it, it'd be like, oh wow. Yeah. So it ultimately hasn't happened yet. And I think it's probably too expensive for where I'm at career wise as a director. So I need to go make something else first. But I have no problem with that. It's just a matter of time. So
if the
Hey man, if Joe Quesada can be making movies now, you can too.
I saw that. That's great for Joe.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So now, if the opportunity arose, would you want to direct No One, whether it was a movie or say a Netflix series, or would you want to be kind of off to the side, continuing writing the story for the series?
Well, the good news is that it's only 10 issues, so it's got an end point on it in the case of No One. Yeah, I mean, I would for sure want to direct on something like that. It's fun. Like, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, certainly it's probably no surprise that there's a Batman influence to No One. In the same way that there's a Power Ranger, although I would argue more Kamen Rider influence to Radiant Black. Certainly aesthetically, you see the Super Sentai influence in their base suits and stuff. It is kind of fun to think about, like, two of the most important things, not only in my career, but I would argue in my childhood, were Batman and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And the fact that now I basically have this cool little sandbox that we've, curated together across, Matt and Michael, Melissa, Ryan, Cherish, Megan. It's kind of fun to think, like, I kind of have my own, Power Ranger type series, and I have my own Batman type series that are doing things. You see the influence, but they are hopefully doing things that are quite different. Just because why that's the only way to do something like this, is to do the stuff that, like, I don't know, just to do the stuff that maybe in the case of like Batman or something, like, you couldn't really do this in modern DC. You couldn't really do something this kind of coordinated, but also this timely, because this very much takes place right now in Pittsburgh with a lot of issues that are going on in our real world, So, it is very creatively fulfilling in that way. I don't remember what the question was. Sorry, I got sidetracked there.
I was too busy listening. I forgot what the question was too. So don't feel bad.
Oh, you're asking about directing. Yeah, so that's what I was going to say, is like, that's kind of the interesting thing, is that the stuff we're doing now, whether it's the Radiant Black and like the Blacklight issues, or even the secret, animated short film that I co-wrote and then I directed, No One, the audio drama, like, we've already recorded the first 6 episodes of the No One audio series. Episode 1 is 35 minutes long, by the way. And so, like, I voice direct the whole series. So we did 3 days on recording stages in January and February with all the actors. And I was on the stage, like, reading and directing on the spot. It is so, like, all of this extra stuff is, like, very fun for me and very creatively, like I said, fulfilling. So it's interesting because it's like, based on my schedule alone right now, like what we have going on this year, I couldn't direct a movie even if it was offered to me for quite some time, like probably at least a year. And it's weird to know that, but also be like totally fine with it, considering how much I've wanted to do my first feature for over 15 years now. Because the stuff we're actually doing and making is like very much scratching that same itch for me.
So
yes, no one else is directing No One. That would be
okay. With the audio series is a companion piece to the comic book, correct?
Yeah. The story very much is they go hand in hand.
Okay, so for the people that read the comic book, do they have to listen to the audio to get the complete story, and vice versa, or are they kind of independent of each other, just telling the same story?
No. They are very much 2 parts of a larger whole. The way that we've designed it is that If you only want to read the comic, that's fine. You only have to read the comic. I would highly recommend you listen to the podcast, though. At the very least, episode 1, and it's free. It's not going to cost. It doesn't cost you anything. I think though, like having just directed 6 of the 10 episodes, like back to back to back to back to back, it is cool. The audio also works entirely as its own thing if you don't read the comic. So they're both separate experiences, but I think they very much have to go hand in hand. Like that's the best way to do it. Read the comic, then you listen to that episode, that month's episode. That's how we've designed the read listen order. That's why there's the QR code in the comic.
Okay, and so I'm just going to go ahead and say this, everybody, for the love of all things holy, do exactly what the man just said. Buy No One, read the comic, listen to the podcast, and then come to the shop and let's talk about it, because that's where it gets fun. We'll theorize about all the things we think that are going to happen in issue number 2, and then we're going to find out in issue number 2 how wrong we were, except for one person who will be like, no, I called it. That's half the fun.
Do you want to hear something from it?
Absolutely.
We're at the point I'm not going to tell you no. Let's do this.
Let me see if I can get something loaded up here.
Have you noticed that when he said, I'm going to load this, and then it was, do you want to hear something? Both of us got as quiet as we have ever been in our lives. We're just like, sure.
And we're both leaning like this into the screen. Yeah, like, ooh, let's do it.
So I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. Could you hear that?
Yeah.
From the Pittsburgh Ledger, PL Media, and The Drop, this is a podcast exploring the accountability murders in Pittsburgh. I'm Julia Page, and we're asking, who is No One?
To the hypocrites and the corrupt, the swindlers, the parasites, all those who take from your fellow man, because like all monsters, you believe yourself safe in the shadows. This message is for you. No one is above the law, and I am no one.
Hi, my name is Julia Page. I'm a reporter for the Pittsburgh Ledger. Welcome to the podcast. It's certainly an interesting time in Pittsburgh. If you're listening, you may already know about No One, Richard Rowe, the copycat killers. If you don't worry, we'll walk you through everything. But to start, and to give you a bit more context, a big goal for this whole podcast, I thought it might be a good idea to tell you a little bit about who I am, why I'm doing this. I grew up here in Monroeville, went to school at Duquesne. I covered high school sports when I was in college as a freelancer and interned at the Ledger over the summer when I was a senior. I started full-time at the Ledger when I was 25, worked on the breaking news desk for 7 years until 2013. From there, I moved to crime for 5 years before I shifted over to sports. You know, it only feels like life and death. Crime?
So yeah, it's a cool one.
Yeah, I definitely like that opening. So the only thing I got to ask of you, Josh, is to make sure I get a copy of No One before them fools buy it out from underneath me again at the shop.
So
don't worry,
if
that
you
was
guys,
one of the books that I signed you up for without your consent.
See, look, Kyle, that's how you know when you've got a really good comic shop owner. When I go in and I look at like what's to be signed up for the next month, my numbers are in certain slots, and I don't even have to look at it anymore. I just keep going.
Well, if you check the chat, you may find a link there.
I am doing that now.
Yep, that love the sound of that. That's the podcast. I kind of felt that little bit of Batman influence with the way that the No One's Above the Law.
Dude, you really just did that?
What's
you
up?
Really just dropped that in the chat for us?
I did.
Dude, that is badass. You are freaking awesome.
Let's see, but now you have to scroll through it and ooh and ah on on live stream at all the gorgeous art.
Oh, don't worry. I will be, but I'm not going to do it because I don't want to deny anybody else the opportunity to pick the book up and actually enjoy it for themselves the first time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Are
I'm
you
scrolling
looking at-
through it right now.
Are
I'm
you
not
going
I'm
through
not
it right
waiting.
now?
I'm not
I
waiting.
looked at it and I was like, oh, wow. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. I'm just scrolling.
I do have to say this art is spectacular.
Yeah.
Um,
Geraldo Borges and Mark Englert on colors.
I love the color palette for this. You kind of get some
Me
of that
too.
Batman feel a little bit, just
Yep.
because of the color palette.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
you definitely get that whole sense of nighttime stories and all that kind of thing. I realize
Totally.
this is kind of awkward because I'm talking about it and nobody else can see it, but no, man, yeah, this is spectacular.
All
I
right. Well,
can't.
how about what if I show everybody a little bit? What about that?
Nobody will complain. I guarantee you.
I got to be
All
honest
right.
with you. I want
Mhm.
you to, but at the same time, I don't want you to because I feel special right now.
Quick enhance Josh's glasses reflections. That's clever. Points to you, Brandon. Heck yes. Here's
Yeah, Kyle, this
just
is
a good
awesome.
comment for you. Yeah, that's about as high praise as you can get right there. Bringing somebody back to the
Oh, thank
medium,
you.
people who love comics. And yeah, I got to tell you, like I said, we were flipping through. If you missed the beginning of the show, we were flipping through previews like we do every month. And we go through Marvel, we go through DC, but Alan and I are both big fans of independent books.
Mhm.
And so we were flipping through previews and we saw no one and we just stopped and we're like, hang on a minute. We're going to need to read this. We're going to need to talk this one up. So we wanted to bring it on. You guys are now looking at a behind the scenes look at issue number 1, which does not come out until next week.
So now,
That
okay,
is
like
true.
we've already established we have 10 issues coming of No One. Where are you at in the writing process of No One?
That's confidential.
Okay.
Well, he's 6 issues in or 6 episodes into the podcast, so that can give you a little bit of a clue anyway.
Okay. Well,
Well,
then
so
let me
the
ask
deal
you this question.
is the deal is that we have, yeah, I mean, we basically, Brian and I have built a Bible that's over 100 slides long for the whole experience, the whole story in all the different kind of mediums we're talking about here. So, we're writing scripts on a kind of monthly pace here for the book, but we've already written 6 of the 10 audio. So we know what every issue is fully, like we've fully broken every issue. But then you're scripting as it gets closer, just because we're all very busy.
So is it too late for me to throw out my own pitch and say that I would really like to either be a murder victim in the book, or I want to be that bald fat man that's got a rooftop garden that screams at no one and says, "Get off my lawn"?
Sure,
If I could be either of those, it would be great.
Well,
get off my lawn on a rooftop garden. That's great.
Alan, it's a shame we didn't talk sooner, because I feel like this next page I'm going to show, which is one of my favorite gags in the book, I feel like this would have been a perfect bit for you. So we see on a double page spread, our No One title spread. Now, when you turn the page again.
Yeah, there we go. That's it.
Look at that. Look at that.
And I see there should be a little bald fat guy right there
Look at those
pointing at
colors.
and screaming, "Don't you do it."
Man, the color palette is spectacular. I tell you, the first time I really noticed colors in a comic and they jumped out at me as well, you can do a lot with this and you can tell the story, was with a cross-gen book called El Cazador. That was Steve Epting on pencils, on art, and Justin Ponser on colors. And Justin Ponser just told this visual story with the colors that absolutely knocked my socks off. And how I've been reading comics since 1983 and didn't really click with the colors until then is beyond me. I don't know. I'm an idiot. but do not cut and use that as a clip for one of our shorts, Alan.
Oh, it's already a short.
Thanks, buddy. But the first time I really picked up on what they were doing with color and the way that he could use color, the man was a freaking genius. We lost him far too young. Cancer sucks.
Yeah.
But Justin Ponser was just incredible with what he would do with colors. And it's just been a part of my comics experience since then to really pay attention to that. And it's really, really good. And that color palette just establishes such a feel for the book. You get a sense right away before you ever read a word of what the vibe of the book is.
Totally. It's also a book that is probably going to sell out, if not on day one, pretty soon after. Like, it's both from reorder standpoint as well as I don't think people really understand what this is yet and how kind of significant of a storytelling experience like we're about to roll out here. So yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I've already gone in today. I had already increased our order pretty healthily just from the initials when we discussed this and got people talking about it in the first place. But I already went in and increased them again. And I'm going to go in just looking at what I've seen here today and with the comments and what I know people are saying and what people are interested in. I'm going to go in and up it again because I want to make sure we have enough to carry them through.
Well, here, you know what?
People don't miss out on the beginning.
You know what else would be fun then that we can do right now? Let me load this up real quick.
Look, we both got quiet and leaned in again.
Yeah.
So you may have seen this already, but because I have this share video file option, I feel like I should take advantage of it, and we can play this.
To the hypocrites and the corrupt, the swindlers, the parasites, all those who take from your fellow man, because like all monsters, you believe yourself safe in the shadows. This message is for you. Is coming, where all monsters will answer for their transgressions. No one is above the law, and I am no one.
Okay, that is just so friggin' awesome.
Man, that is awesome.
So I'm one of those that I normally pick up my comics on Fridays just because of my schedule. But next week might be the 1 week that I actually find out somehow, some way to get up there on Wednesday.
There you go. I love it.
Oh, dude, that is that. I told you, Kaylee. Yes, you are right. That is awesome.
Well, did we see? Since we have this function, I mean, maybe we should show this. Apologies.
To the hypocrites and the corrupt, the swindlers, the parasites, all those who take from your fellow man, because like all monsters, you believe yourself safe in the shadows. This message is for you.
Oh, we got a different thing here.
Oh, sorry, I don't know why it's not.
I'm just like watching it again. I was all up into it all over
Yeah,
again.
me too. Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, now that was on the Twitter feed, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There's all sorts of no one sightings happening.
So Kyle has now officially become the guy that shows up to the party with snacks, drinks, and birthday cake. And I feel like the guy that just showed up empty-handed to mooch off everybody.
Hey, look, every party needs one.
That's right. That's right. Oh man, that's so cool. I get a little bit of a sense of hang on one sec. Yes, we will put you on the list. You got it. We'll put you on the list. Make sure you get that. Um, I get a little bit of a sense, a little bit of a feel, with the I guess the framing device you're using here, the storytelling with the author. There's a little bit of Ben Urich and Daredevil, just a smidge, which I totally dig because that is one of my favorite relationships. I guess it's one of my favorite things about the way Daredevil has historically been told is that kind of relationship, and you kind of see it from somebody else's perspective a little bit through the eyes of Ben Urich. So I think that's spectacular. We did have a question up here a little bit. Nate, we didn't really talk about Radiant Black a whole lot. We kind of have skipped around because we really wanted to get to No One because that comes out next week. And we're super pumped about it.
Well, what if to chat a little about Radiant Black then, I guess, what if we do this to kick off a conversation?
Hey everyone, my name's Kyle Higgins. I'm the co-creator and writer of Radiant Black, a millennial superhero series that helped kick off the massive verse at Image Comics. For the last 2 years, we've really taken it upon ourselves to push the boundaries on what we think a modern superhero story can be. We've done in-universe social media and merch boxes, original orchestral scores, existential blacklight issues, an origin story told as a fold-out across 4 eras simultaneously. We even did a 5.5-minute secret animated short film with Batman Beyond's Will Friedle voicing Radiant Black. But this July, for our seminal 25th issue, we're taking our biggest swing yet. Catalyst is the machine empire with ties to the Radiants. But what is their larger role in the universe? What do the Radiants mean to them? And what does it mean for Nathan, Marshall, and Earth when Catalyst shows up to take back what is theirs? Nathan, Marshall, and the others will learn the truth about the Radiants they've synced their lives to, clash with cosmic gods, and be forced to make even tougher decisions for the lives of billions. Joining me on this 6-month odyssey is my partner in all things Radiant Black, Marcelo Costa, as well as our series superstars Joe Clark, Eduardo Ferragato, Raul Angelo, Becca Carey, and Michael Basuto. Similar to another big event that I built in 2018, Power Rangers Shattered Grid, this is a story with massive stakes. Every character, every storytelling decision thus far, they've all been leading to the Catalyst War, and it kicks off this July with Radiant Black number 25. Join us as we push the boundaries once again, this time on what a superhero event can be.
Josh, do I even need to say it?
No.
Okay. All right. All right. Now that we've handled that piece of business, let's get back to the talk show. On the blacklight issues, do you have a lot to do with the direction and how the art should look in those, or is that just totally on the artist?
No, I mean, I'm very involved. Fortunately, we have 2 people that work on that book that are exceptional artists. Marcelo, who not only is Radiant Black co-creator, as well as the illustrator on that issue, but Marcelo was a colorist for many, many years before he started drawing Radiant Black. So Marcelo has a whole lot of not only skill but thoughts on color as well. But then the colorist that works on the issue, who actually colors the book in the fluorescent Pantone inks, is Igor Monti. And he is he's a monster. Like, what he can do with the Pantone limitations that we have for the fluorescent inks and how it works. it's the effects he's able to create are incredible. And like, we actually have our next Blacklight issue. It's on FOC on Monday, and it's Radiant Black number 24. And something else that's on FOC on Monday that I'm going to put out through a newsletter tomorrow with a pretty exciting announcement in it. The other thing that's on FOC on Monday is we are bringing back the Radiant Blacklights, the keychain Blacklights that we do. And stores are going to be able to order those along with the Blacklight edition of issue 24. And just to give you a little sense here, why don't I show some art from that?
This is like Christmas, man. I'm loving it.
I got to be
Every time I
careful
turn
what
around,
I
he's pulling
show.
something else out of his Santa's backpack there.
Right.
Hey, anybody watching this show is getting some awesome views into the massive verse, into individual stories. Man, this is awesome.
All right. So here's what you need to know about the Blacklight issue. The way it works is that our yellow ink is replaced with a fluorescent yellow. And then on top of that, we have Pantone inks for magenta and an orange that are fluorescent. So anything that yellow is mixed with will have blacklight fluorescency to it. The more pure yellow it is, the more vibrant it's going to be. But then on top of that, we have the two special inks, and white color shifts perceptibly blue under blacklight. So that's page 1 of Radiant Black here.
Why isn't that just a poster?
That's what that's what I thought he was showing us. That is insane.
So from a
I'll show you
storytelling
one more.
perspective, this is kind of the opposite of that 4 pages or 4 different storylines going across page by page, right? You've got this
Right.
big scene setting, instead of that super tight focus on one thing, it's this big scene setting, establishing shots you've got going on. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
Awesome. Thank you.
To get him to the Pop Culture Expo one year.
I was going to ask that. We've got the Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo coming up here April 21st through the 24th. And we're full up this year, but it'll be about that same time period in 2024. And would love to talk to you about coming out as a guest to that.
Yeah, maybe. It all depends on. I don't know what the rest of this year is insane. I don't quite know what next year looks like yet, but yeah, definitely a possibility. So
Kaylisa asked a good question here. What does something like that Blacklight issue? What does that look like on a script? As a writer, what in the world are you writing?
It's a normal script, with the exception that we use the magenta Pantone as a story device in existence, that it's the light of existence, and existence only cares about one thing, which is truth. So I actually try to use the specialty ink in some ways as like actually a narrative function of the place. So sometimes I'll call out specific specialty ink, like, let's do this in this color here, etc. But honestly, most of it's Igor. I mean, Igor he's brilliant with color and as a storyteller as well. So like he's making choices and then we talk about certain things, but there are pages coming up that are just ridiculous. Tell you what, I'll show you one more.
Love it.
This is a double page spread.
Oh, wow. That's super trippy. like MC Escher would love this.
Yep.
Oh wow.
But even with it being super trippy, that is absolutely gorgeous.
Well, yeah, but picture that under a blacklight, dude.
Yeah.
All the blacklight reflective stuff is just going to have it will look totally different in under the blacklight than it does right there, and that's awesome.
Yep.
That's such a really creative idea too, and that's taking advantage of something that you have in comics that you don't have in other mediums. You couldn't do that in a book. You might be able to achieve a similar thing with special effects in a movie, but in comics, that's something that you can do that's real, it's tactile, it's interactive, it looks different. Yeah, agreed. It has a different appearance if you look at it one way versus another, which you don't have that option to do in movies. Just fantastic stuff.
I thought this was an interesting question, so I threw it up here right quick. He's referring to Gates of Gotham was incredible. How much research went into writing that?
A lot, actually. You know what? I just had lunch today with someone, and that came up, and I was explaining that I actually did quite a bit of research on it. Real world research, but then also fictional Gotham City research. And at the time, this was before the New 52, really broke things as far as continuity. And then that led to Rebirth or DCU, and then that led to Rebirth. And then I don't know, I don't know how things work anymore from timeline standpoint, but
I can tell you they've broken it such that everything is canon and there is no canon.
Okay.
I like the creativity, the freedom that gives writers, but I dislike that it removes any and all consequence from actions.
Well, I mean that is a thing though. Like at a certain point, I can't believe it's lasted this long, where you have basically you can only keep telling the same stories on top of the same thing without being able to change stuff for so long, and resetting it like as band-aids, where it's like it all at a certain point it gets to this unwieldy place where you just have to accept that. But anyway, as far as Gotham in particular went, I knew I wanted to tell a story in the late 1800s. I was really fascinated by Devil in the White City at the time, and just the idea of I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. Like the skyscrapers and architecture in Chicago are very influential to me and inspiring, and just the story of how the first skyscrapers in America went up, the mechanics behind it, I was just very fascinated by. And so I decided that in order to square this era, it had to fit after the Destroyer storyline that was done in 1992, when Cyrus Pinckney basically was the original designer of Gotham, or one of the designers, and he built all of these buildings that have been covered up, is what the conceit of the story was. And so this bomber is going around blowing up the facades of the buildings, revealing the true Gotham City skyline underneath, which was DC's way of getting Gotham canonically to look like the Anton Furst drawings from the Tim Burton Batman movie. Anton Furst was the production designer. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I make, I don't want to invalidate anything. How do I find a way to slot in here? And so I did. I don't remember exactly how I did it. I have to look at the issues again for the specific continuity of it all. But then with regards to the era, the idea of again, looking at the rise of the first skyscrapers, but also the families of power that shaped a city, and then building out backstories. In the case of the Elliots, I really I went in and made them a newspaper family and built out some of that stuff. And the Waynes, I really wanted. My dad is a very big train aficionado, and I quite liked the idea of the Waynes having railroad kind of ties. I think I did. I think I'm the one that did that.
No
if I didn't,
intended.
then what's up?
No
Oh yeah,
intended.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was a conscious effort. I kind of built the train the railroad stuff leading into Wayne Tower as a hub underneath it, like the original Wayne Tower. The canes, we brought in the canes. Yep. Yeah, that was a special one. So, and actually, last year the new Robert Pattinson Batman movie, it was a fun little, pleasant surprise. I have a special thanks credit on that because of Gates of Gotham.
Well deserved too. Yeah, that was an awesome story. As I said earlier, one of my favorites that you did over there at DC was the New Order. Was such a great story. I really, really loved that.
Thank you.
But we've talked about a lot of stuff tonight, and I will say this for anybody who you saw some of the stuff that he posted about Radiant Black, some of the art, some of the story ideas, some of the video that you saw. If you haven't read the book and you say, man, I really want to check that out, catch it up, this is volume 1 of the trades. There's 3 trades out right now. You should be able to get those from your local comic shop. Barring that, it's available any number of places, any number of ways. You do not want to miss out on that. Pick up Radiant Black. And if you're kicking yourself saying, man, I didn't pick up Radiant Black when I had the chance, I wish I had done that. Don't do that for No One. No One comes out next week. This hits the stands next Wednesday. Pick it up. Call your LCS. Make sure that they pull that for you. Add it to your pull list. Make sure they put it in your subscriber file. However your LCS does it, make sure that you get this book because you do not want to miss out. And then follow the man's advice. Check out the podcast. Explore that augmented reality. Check out some of the sightings of No One because that's been happening. That's been popping up. People are seeing No One out and about, and check that stuff out. It's a fun way to explore something in the medium that we all love. We wouldn't be here watching this, listening to this, if we weren't into comics. Check it out. Enjoy it. This is a writer who's taking advantage of what you can do in comics and what you can do around comics with the technology that we have today to tell stories, and he's bringing some of those things together and doing some awesome things with it. So yeah, make sure that No One is on your pull list. Make this. He said this might sell out. Let's make sure it does.
Yeah, if I have a second printing cover ready to go too, and it's a good one. It's a real good one. So I'm selfishly hoping for the opportunity to use that at some point here with issue 1. So it'd be a really nice second printing cover.
You've got that Who is No One cover on issue number 3. That one's pops, man. I love that cover. That's awesome.
Which one is that?
It's the big kind of closer in, zoomed in a little bit.
Where he's throwing the punch?
Yeah. That's a great cover. Yeah, love all the surprises, man. This was a show full of surprises and behind the scenes kinds of things that you didn't. I haven't seen this anywhere else. Some of this stuff, so this is awesome.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm doing right now for anybody that might have missed it earlier in the show, if you will go check out blackmarket.la, I'm going to tell y'all right now, go to the webpage, immediately scroll to the bottom and put in your email address and sign up for the newsletter. I did it while we were talking earlier. It takes 2 seconds and immediately got an email telling me where to go to get a podcast. So go do that. Kyle, we are at a very important moment in the night.
Uh-oh.
This is a standard question that I ask all creators. There is a backstory to this question that only means something to a very small handful of us, but it is very possibly the most important question you will ever be asked in your entire career.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to propose. He's not going to propose. It's okay.
I'm not going to propose.
You guys are freezing every other word, so I'm catching most of this.
Okay, how's that? Is that a little better?
Maybe I think so. Oh, I could lower my. I'm high definition. I could go lower. Do I look worse?
No, I mean you look fine. You're still adorable.
There you go. Yeah.
So, like I said, very possibly the most important question you'll ever be asked in your career.
Sure.
As a
Yep, got that.
writer, and you've written a ton of books that all of us love, but as a writer, you truly understand character development. So here's the question. Is Miss Piggy a femme fatale? He's having to think about it. I love it.
I just don't know any Miss Piggy stories is the issue. She really likes Kermie. I know that.
And she likes to
does she
karate chop.
Does she sabotage Kermit?
No, but she will get
Well,
him scrap.
all the time, but I don't know if it's on purpose or not.
No, I don't think so, because a femme fatale knows they're being manipulative.
All right, well, you're wrong, but I will say this. Tom Price, that officially makes me 4 and you 2-0 and you 2. So you're catching up to me, but you and your people are wrong. Miss Piggy's a femme fatale.
I mean, I think my problem with the comparison is that I don't think about femme fatales and Muppets. I don't think that it. I mean, maybe.
Well, see,
I just haven't seen enough Muppets.
Well, see,
That's really
nobody
the truth.
would ever think of a Muppet as a femme fatale, and I think that's what makes the argument so freaking great when we had it that night. So,
what do
it
you
was just
think
kinda
makes
like-
for a femme? What makes for a femme fatale?
Oh, we
Black Spiders has the right of it. I just know not to F with Miss Piggy.
exactly.
And that's correct. She'll karate chop you into next week.
Basically, at the end of the day, pretty much a dangerous woman. A woman that could truly kick your ass if she needed to.
But that you're also like hopelessly in love with or infatuated with. Like that's the other I
Yeah.
feel like important part.
So kind
I
of
would
like
agree.
Remember those like sexy thrillers of the 90s? Like that's what I associate with femme fatales, you know.
Vampirella
Basic
would be a really
Instinct
good
and
would be a really good one. That would be
that?
Vampirella would be a good femme fatale.
Vampirella. Okay.
Yeah.
I have not
No,
read Vampirella.
I would agree with you. I like the Basic Instinct was a good example of a femme fatale, right?
That's like a very pushed example of it, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah, just stay away from the ice picks.
Yeah. Good rule of
But
thumb.
yeah, you learned something today.
Well, let me ask you guys before we wrap up here, and I'm saying that because I'm gonna have to go and get some food, and I have
Dude,
pages
you
to
have
write.
stayed way longer than we ever thought, but we were so engrossed that we were just like this the whole time.
What are you both finding in our line right now that is exciting to you, as far as
just
like what we're doing?
Just comics in
with
general,
regards to what's that?
You mean just comics in general, or your stuff specifically? What are you talking about?
No, like our Massiveverse stuff. Like, what are you? I'm curious what you're finding and what you're seeing from customers that is resonating.
Well, I'll tell you, for me, Rogue Sun was a bit of a surprise to folks. Like right there, like this looks cool. Wait a minute, this is tied into other stuff. I don't know if you read much. Are you familiar with the writer Brandon Sanderson?
Yeah.
Right. You know how he's got his Cosmere where everything is interrelated,
Mm-hmm.
and all this stuff. The Massiveverse feels kind of similar to me in that regard, in that you have these very disparate kinds of stories, but they're interrelated. And so that's an element that a lot of folks, our customer base, we have a lot of readers and a lot of fans of Brandon Sanderson. So when they learn that these books are interrelated, it's whichever one brought them in the door.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, wait a minute. Now I have to go and get these other ones too, because I need to know all of the things. Right. So just that, I guess the fundamental shared universe that you've created, which I think, if I'm going to be honest, it was done in a really smart way, because you can tell a lot of different kind of stories in worlds that feel separate and unique, but when you ultimately link them all together, they make sense that way too.
Right.
And I think that that's really brilliant. So that's one of the things that we get is people who will identify a book because that one individual book looks cool, and then they find out that it's tied to other things, and that draws them in. And so there's it's like they peel back a layer of the onion and they find out, wait a minute, there's more here, so they want to keep peeling.
Oh, good, good.
It also the whole, this is going to sound really bad. I don't mean any disrespect to anybody from any other companies or titles or anything. I like the fact that it's a shared universe, but none of the characters trample all over each other like they do in other shared universes.
Right.
It feels it's more of an organic, natural feel when they're actually together. So yeah, it doesn't feel just like it's just jammed together for the sake of having another person in the book.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That I'm glad to hear that. That is something that we work very hard at to make sure that we maintain. So.
Well, and certainly books like Radiant Black, Radiant Pink, Supermassive. These are you built up a really big fan base with Power Rangers of people who were like, this Power Rangers is amazing. Matter of fact, we've got a guy who was supposed to be on the show tonight. I don't know where he went. There's another YouTube channel called Two Brothers Comics. Great guys, awesome guys. As it happens, the pair of brothers who they both bought their first comics from my store. Just 5-6 years ago?
Yeah,
somewhere there. It hasn't been very long. They haven't been reading comics their whole lives. But they bought them and they got hooked, got in hook, line, and sinker, right? And now they've got a podcast channel where comics is what they talk about and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But one of the brothers, Dustin, the very first comics he ever bought is one of the weirdest entrees into comics I've ever heard in my life. There was the local comic shop day Power Rangers mystery box. It was the sealed box,
okay.
If you remember that, right?
I don't, but sure.
It was a black box that was sealed up, and I had no idea what was inside it. Nobody knew what was inside it. And he walks in, he's looking around, and that was the very first thing he ever bought. That was the very first comic book he ever bought, was this black box of Power Rangers books. And he was hooked immediately. You were his first comic book. And he was in full tilt. He's still going full tilt today. He's cleaning and pressing comics now and sending them off to CGC.
Oh, cool.
I mean, he's doing all this business, and he's when he's focused on a thing, he is into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the very first comics he ever read were your comics, and that absolutely made a fan out of him.
So, and this is a kind of a little add-on story to that, and then I'll let you go so you can get something to eat. Two Brothers Comics actually did a variant cover of Supermassive.
Yeah.
So Deegan Procors, the artist who did this cover, last year he was at the Pop Culture Expo and here in Huntsville. And I go round in the corner, and his table was kind of set up. It was kind of an awkward place where they had his table set up. He was like amongst a whole bunch of toy vendors and stuff like that. Well, I rounded the corner, and he was there, and I'm like, oh, crap. So I walk over to him, and I'm like, hey, he had art prints there, really nice setup. And I was like, hey, are you signing books that people brought, or are you only signing your artwork? And he got this really weird look on his face. And at first I thought I'd said something wrong. And he goes, you brought a book? And I said, yeah. And I pulled out Supermassive 1. Yeah. And he goes, you want me to sign that? And I'm like, yeah. I can sit here and honestly say this is the first book that Deegan ever did that he actually autographed for somebody. This awesome. Right here, nobody had ever brought a book of his to a con before to get autographed. Mm-hmm. So and we were talking about this last weekend in a group chat. Sometimes the best thing about our hobby is the community itself. Mm-hmm. So this one book, whether you know it or not, this one book right here created a moment for a couple of people. I got to give him the first book that he ever signed. We actually, none of that would have happened if y'all hadn't have done something like this.
That's
So
true.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot. What people don't realize is there's a lot more to our hobby than just, colored pages. There's a really big, massive community, and I did want to share that with you because sometimes I don't think that y'all get to hear stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all don't get to hear the smaller stories that go on behind the scenes at the cons and stuff.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, we're very much in it and just trying to make the books right now, which is, a big undertaking. But it's a blast. So, you're exhausted all the time, but we're making cool stuff, and it feels like people are continuing to find it. So yeah.
Well, you're giving them a whole lot of different avenues into it from all the different books, and I think that was really smartly done.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, I absolutely. We don't want to keep you any longer. We appreciate so much you coming on the show and talking with us and giving us some sneak peeks at some of these things. I think No One is going to be a huge hit, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I'm so excited. So thank you so much for bringing that to us, and we look forward to it and hope you get good news on that from a sales perspective across the country and around the world. So really, really do appreciate you coming on the show.
Of course. Awesome. Well, yeah, let me know. Drop me a line. Let me know after you read issue 1 what you think.
Absolutely will do. We used to be a quiz show. We did a trivia show. So we had a fun little video that ended it. So I like to play that to play us out. But everybody who came on and is watching this tonight, thank you so much. If you're watching this later, as most of our audience seems to do, stick around through the whole episode because you're going to see a lot of awesome things. Thank you for hanging with us. And we will catch you guys all next week. Thank you very much.